I'm quitting.
To co-host.
Yes, we do need to mark him. So this is Dr. Smith. He is the first co-host.
Okay, Smith. So you do like this and then just make.
Oh, you want me to do it? I can do it, sure.
Make co-host.
Make host. Yes, and you can find all the other people here. And
how many are they?
Several.
We can make them co-hosts right away, so you don't have to do it later.
Oh.
Yeah.
Liane
Yes.
and
Amy. Katarina. And Stephanie Labou.
Yep.
And let me make sure that's in.
det rullar i ettan, va?
Vad sa du?
Det rullar i ettan.
Ja, den är igång.
Good.
Yeah, that's it.
Och han spelar in nu, ja. Bra. Då är det färdigt.
All right, you're ready to
Good to go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I guess we'll get started, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is session F2 on partnerships and collaboration. Presentation number 1 will be given by Dr. Plato Smith from the University of Florida. Dr. Smith assists in the development of socio-technical relationships with diverse stakeholders and chairs the Data Management and Curator Working Group at the University of Florida. As the Data Management Librarian for the George A. Smathers Libraries, his primary responsibility is to support all aspects of the research data science ecosystem. He provides data management planning and data curation support to undergraduate, graduate, and research faculty across the UF campus. His expertise includes the development of socio-technical collaborations, data management planning and sharing support, data repositories, recommendations, electronic lab notebook recommendations, and collaborative grants requiring data management support. He works in collaboration within and across academic units, disciplines, and networks on campus. Prior to joining UF in 2016, he completed the 2014 to 2016 CLEAR postdoctoral fellowship program in data curation at the University of New Mexico. He received his doctorate in the field of information science from the School of Information within the College of Communication and Information at Florida State University, Florida's iSchool, in the summer of 2014. Thank you. Dr. Smith?
Thank you. Once again, my name is Plato Smith, Data Management Librarian at the University of Florida. This presentation will articulate the work leading to the developing institutional data management policy at UF and draft, highlight partnership with University of Florida Informatics Institute to conduct data management training workshops, discuss introductory data management training for USDA NIFTA funded Smart Path projects, which is a funded project by United States Department of Agriculture, discuss development of a graduate data management course at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville School of Information. It was his first data management course, and then highlight internal and external collaborators of an improved but unfunded United States Department of Health and Human Services grant proposal in fiscal year 2021. Here's just a brief snapshot of University of Florida, established in 1853. It's a Research 1 classification, public land grant with over 2,000 acres, campus, over 54,000 students, and over 5,000 faculty, and is currently located in Florida, United States. And is also part of the State University system in Florida. This quote is an unsolicited comment from IT director in relation to the recent implementation of one of the ORCID APIs by University of Florida Research that integrates with the UFirst proposal and award management system of the University of Florida. UFirst stands for UF Integrated Research Support Tool. In 2017, the libraries facilitated ORCID Premium Consortium membership via Greater Western Library Alliance / Lyricist Consortium. The membership at the time was $4,000 a year. Prior to joining the consortium, membership would have been $22,000 a year. And includes 5 APIs for integration with UF infrastructure, with 2 currently in use by the library's open journal system through IASSIST, and then also the University of Florida Research ORCID portal. The impact from this collaboration include ORCID API integration with UFirst grant management award system to share research information at UF with ORCID profile. And here's just a table of content for this presentation. So briefly go over the policy, training, partnership with researchers, and then a grant proposal. In December 2018, the libraries collaborated with the University of Florida Center for Environmental and Human Toxicology on a $13 million NIH grant, Superfund grant. The proposal included a new required data management analysis core in which the PI invited the library to be co-PI for the data management analysis core. And what a data management analysis core is basically how all the researchers part of this grant funded project are going to share their data and make it findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. The PI contacted UF Research, which in turn UF Research referred the PI to the library, which resulted in an opportunity to collaborate on this project. Even though the proposal was not funded, the DMAC received a good score for the first time of this being required for a Superfund proposal. In October 2019, the Vice President of Research called a meeting to select stakeholders interested in research data management to discuss the first data management infrastructure at UF draft and outline next steps, also a policy draft. In September 2021, the Director Office of Clinical Research and Chief Operating Officer of Clinical and Translational Science Institute called a meeting to resume research data management draft policy development and discussion. And here's just some highlights from the partnership with Informatics Institute. For the first 2 years, performed basic data management training workshops, which were conducted at Informatics Institute. They provided not only the venue, but also provided lunch for the training workshops. Also in 2018, developed the first data management symposium, which included nearly 100 participants, faculty, staff, graduate and undergraduate students across campus. And then followed by a 2-day data carpentry workshop, which was held at Informatics Institute. 2019-2020, so the library continues to support funding for the carpentries, is currently operated out of Informatics Institute by doctoral students. And they formed the University of Florida Carpentry Club. So they're responsible for all the carpentries here at UF. In 2021, developed a fall data management training series. And the average attendance of researchers was right around, first was 30, but the average was right around 12 to 15 researchers. And the Informatics Institute provided registration, promotion via the website, and conducted the Zoom meeting. And here is just a snapshot of 3 training workshops that were conducted for SmartPath researchers. And the first one was a sensor development team. And then the second was economic analysis and survey teams, PIs, and then water treatment. And basically the purpose of these trainings was just to introduce the researchers to exactly the requirement for the NIFTA data management plan, which are highlighted each of the bulleted items. The SmartPath researchers were introduced to the data audit framework concept map to help think through some of the necessary details for the proposed research data types and formats. The project tier protocol 4.0 was introduced to the researchers for recommended steps for folder naming and specifying the content and organization of reproduction documents for a project involving computation with statistical data. The SmartPath researchers were introduced to the data, the Zenodo data management data repository. And here I just went through the steps of uploading data into Zenodo as a general data repository. Here you can already see I've developed in the sandbox. You can see the various different types of data types our researchers can develop to deposit in Zenodo. During summer 2018, Oak Ridge Associated University Faculty Travel Grant was developed and submitted. And the purpose of this grant was to develop new collaborations with an Oak Ridge Associated University institution. And so visited the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, distributed Active Archive Center, and then also visited the University of Tennessee School of Information System. As a result of that faculty travel grant, during the visit with University of Tennessee, Knoxville, the director at the time offered the invitation to develop a data management training course, a new course. And I agreed. And so the first course was developed in spring 2019. It was an independent graduate course, 3 credit hours. And as a result of the student evaluations, it was offered again in 2020. And I really enjoyed the comments and the students. For those in the audience, if you ever taught a class before, this is my first time teaching the class, it was very rewarding. One student said, "Oh, he's winging it." Yes, it was a new course. And then quite a few other students, one said, "Everything I learned in this class is useful." So the student comprised graduate students from USDA, Information Technology at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and various disciplines. For the second cohort, actually the data management librarian from Carnegie Mellon attended, and also invited her to be a guest speaker. The developed research data management certificate. It was proposed by an associate professor there. And so in fall 22, the independent course is now a required research data management course for the RDM certificate. This is just a highlight. Here's an example of a grant proposal to develop institutional support for research support services. Even though it was approved, it was not awarded. However, this proposal was turned into a book chapter, which was published earlier this year. Here's a list of internal external collaborators. Those in the blue are letters of commitment for the proposal, and green are letters of support. It wasn't until after I fully read the proposal, yes, I will say that, that letters of support were not allowed. So I just repurposed those that had agreed to be a letter of support as part of the advisory board. So it wasn't a total waste of effort there. Here's the second proposal, which is currently in pending sponsor review. And as you can see, the goal of this is to create institutional support for collaborative institution training initiative courses. Figshare, currently UF does not have which is considered a data repository specifically. So this proposal is for a Figshare implementation, open science framework, and select ELN notebooks and protocols IO. Been getting requests for both electron lab notebooks and protocols IOs from researchers. So here is just a brief design of the proposal ecosystem. As I mentioned before, you have the OS Open Science Framework, RSpace, and eLab Journal is currently used by the Boulant Lab as a researcher recruited from Heidelberg University in Germany, in which he used eLab Journal. And prior to him joining, the library suggested that he submit eLab Journal through University of Florida Integrated Risk Management Fast Path Solution, which is risk assessment for software. So definitely the library's role in supporting researchers is once they've identified software in which they use to recommend that it goes through a risk assessment. So the proposed courses include research study design, good laboratory practice, data management and security for student researchers, an overview, responsible conduct for research, and False Claims Act. Currently, none of those city program courses are currently available at UF, so this proposal would purchase a license for that. And here are the two research questions from the current proposal. What constitutes good laboratory practice in the conduct of research? How can the ELN ecosystem support research related to ensuring research integrity? And then the image. This is not a formal endorsement of RSpace, but this is a good representation of the RSpace and its ecosystem supporting reproducibility and fair data. Quite a few researchers here at UF use Dropbox, Box, OneDrive. So this is a good representation of integration of some of the products that researchers are currently use and that ELN such as RSpace will integrate with what is currently being used. Researchers also use protocols IO and Dataverse. Lessons learned, the CCC of RDM at R1. So conversations, definitely with key holders supporting research data management efforts. The first challenge was identifying and aggregating key stakeholders. And actually right before this meeting, received an email from the director of IT research computing, who shared a thread of senior stakeholders requesting university-wide electronic lab notebook. And they've already proposed two, which maybe is not what the library's recommended, but as another senior stakeholder within the library suggested, this is a good sign moving forward, even if the product that they suggested might be different from what the library suggested. So it's a good thing that it's moving forward. I'll just end it right there. Collaboration with funded research projects, distinguishing between letters of support and letters of commitment. Yes, this is obvious, and I would say I kind of dropped the ball on that, but still, if you're already into the letters of support, which cannot be used, just repurposing those collaborations into advisory boards, integrating them within the project nevertheless. Learn this, selecting internal, external research collaborators is like selecting a spouse. Came across that from a faculty member when I was in a doctoral program at Florida State University, and it immediately stuck with me because if you select a wrong collaborator, it can be like a bad marriage. Cost, this is huge. From some of the workshops I've already attended presentation, cost is always who's going to pay for it. It's good proposal. A lot of people support it, but when it comes down who's going to support it, it's been quite challenging. Recently, a senior associate dean requested license RSpace, 5,000 users, was quoted at $99,000 a year. Lab archives a few years ago was 250,000 over 3 years. And so this is way above me, but it's good that the libraries is a stakeholder at the table in these conversations moving forward as far as developing university-wide solutions. I'd like to acknowledge a list of acknowledgements, supporters of the library's efforts and collaboration. And these have taken years to develop, just like the university-wide policy, which is still in draft. Talking to other colleagues, university-wide research data management policy normally takes several years. University of Edinburgh has an excellent policy, was recently released, updated policy. And references, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Does anyone have questions here in the audience? Are there any questions online? Okay, we'll move on to the next presentation. We'll move on to the next presentation. I'll just introduce the presenters. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. Sorry about that. I'm Meryl Brodsky. I'm a liaison librarian from the University of Texas in Austin. So the next presentation is Sharing the Load, Collaboration Across the University of California System. It's presented virtually by Stephanie Labou and Amy Work. Stephanie Labou is the data science librarian with the UC San Diego Library. Stephanie provides user assistance with data sets and data analysis through general reference, in-person consultations, and collection development of licensed and open access data. She also provides instruction and short-form workshops on coding skills and best practices, including the popular software and data carpentry workshops. Amy Work is the GIS librarian at UC San Diego. Amy supports students, faculty, researchers, and staff with their geospatial needs through consultations, workshops, and coursework. She also supports geospatial data curation and is currently working on a cross-UC project to make these geospatial data holdings more discoverable with GeoBlacklight. Over to you.
Thanks, Meryl. So hi, everyone, virtually from early morning in California. So I am Stephanie. I am the data science librarian at UC San Diego, and Amy is my colleague and collaborator on this. And today we're going to be talking about ways that we are collaborating across the University of California system.
So the University of California system is comprised of 10 campuses that each function independently. So in total, these 10 campuses have more than 280,000 students and more than 227,000 faculty and staff. And in this system also includes 5 medical centers and 3 affiliated national laboratories. While we function independently, we also are under the same regents, which allows us to collaborate on a variety of different projects or research or other.
And so before COVID, when we think back, way back, we did have some campuses that would put on in-person workshop series or presentations during GIS Day, which is in November, and Love Data Week, which is in February. And so these events typically had turnouts between 10 to 20 people. They're pretty small in-person events. And there was no overarching theme or effort to connect events across campuses. So this was very much a siloed situation where one campus might do something for GIS Day, the others wouldn't. A couple might do something for Love Data Week, but there was no real communication or collaboration besides the occasional, hey, I heard you're doing something that seems cool, with no sort of overarching connection.
So at this, we determined and we said, let's work together on this. Let's see if we can create a single event where we're collaborating from different campuses and different universities to come together. And so we ended up creating both the UC GIS Week and the UC Love Data Week. And in these, our ultimate goal was, how do we better support patrons across the UC system in the work that we're already doing within our own libraries? Both events ended up having more than 800 attendees. UC Love Data Week had over 1,000 attendees in the second year. But in the creation of these events and others, that these events were designed as complementary and not competitive. And so that was really the lens of leveraging one another, what we're learning from one another to move forward. So within UC GIS Week, we had the formation of UC GIS Week was really, we had 2 existing groups that were already collaborating monthly or working together. We had the UC GIS Leadership Group, was comprised of different individuals across the UC campuses, administrative, academic, IT, who were bringing together different knowledge and expertise on GIS across the campuses. And then we also had another library-based group called the UC Maps and GIS Community, the Common Knowledge Group, sharing just different geospatial and maps information across the libraries. In the creation of UC GIS Week, we ended up creating a conference chair and a formal committee. So that chair helped run, coordinate the meetings and everything else. We also had within that committee, we had specific working groups who would help coordinate specific events of the UCGIS week. So we had a logistics group, we had a programming group, and we had a marketing group.
And so UC Data Week was really inspired by UCGIS Week. So again, all of this was really when COVID hit and the campuses went virtual. We realized things are virtual anyways, we should work together. And oh, by the way, the GIS librarians have done a fabulous job. I wonder if we could do something similar for data. And so the main organizing group grew out of an existing cross UC data curation group. And the idea was that each campus would put on events like it normally would, but because they're all virtual, they would be open to any UC affiliate. So we had a loose group of volunteers. It was not so much the formal conference format of UCGIS Week. All volunteers, there was a people wrangler in chief, which was me. We had a couple people that worked on our website, and then each campus had a designated contact person who was responsible for liaising between this kind of main group and campus events. So mostly so we could make sure that we didn't have too many conflicts in terms of, duplicate content or things being at the same time. So it's a much more loose format as opposed to GIS Week.
And so in the content development that we created for UCGIS Week, we ended up doing a call for submission. So our programming group ended up creating a form and sent it out to everyone at the different campuses, our contacts, and then they passed it on to others. So we did a call for submissions. And while we aim to be both presentation and workshops, those that were submitted back ended up being more presentation. So our event became more presentation focused rather than workshops. And we chose as a group to be able to record all of our sessions. We got permissions ahead of time and post them on a single YouTube channel. So for those who couldn't make it due to the time or other, they were able to watch post-event.
And so for UC Data Week, because of the way the event was organized with each campus kind of responsible for its own events, we had a much more informal process for determining topics. So the main organizing group, which is essentially 1 or 2 people from each campus, got together and said, okay, we should probably have a data sharing 101 talk. We should probably have a finding data 101 talk. And the rest was determined from content we would present anyways, as well as some hot topics. So for instance, multiple UC campuses have a medical school, and all those faculty members and researchers need to know about the new NIH data sharing guidelines. But we determined that UC San Francisco was best positioned to give that presentation, which they did, which was fabulous. And so each campus would kind of come up with what it wanted to talk about. We'd have this overarching collaboration to make sure we didn't have duplicate content. And then each campus would handle their own individual event registration and also handle recordings up to each specific campus.
And so what was the structure of UCGIS Week? We ended up offering 2 tracks for both years 1 and years 2. And we offered 3 sessions each day. So a 10 a.m., a 1 p.m. and a 3 p.m. So giving some breaks in between. And we had more than 74 presentations each year. So different individuals who submitted. And the topics included a range of different things, from looking at health and human services, indigenous mapping, marine archaeology, natural resources in the environment, social justice. We also had facilities. So it was really this broad ranging topic and trying to align things where we wouldn't necessarily have the 2 health tracks at the same time.
And so UC Data Week also had a really wide range of topics. We had about 30 presentations each year. So again, there's always an interest in us as librarians, and most of our organizers were from the library or research IT. So we're really interested in making sure that we're presenting on data management plans and data sharing. And then of course, there's always hot topics like, web scraping and social media data. And so we had users register for each event individually, meaning they could pick and choose what they wanted to attend, as opposed to registering for the entire conference or workshop or event series, whatever you want to call it, all at once. And so in 2020, we had a single track. So Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., there was something every single hour, essentially. And people would pick and choose what they wanted to attend. In 2021, we got or 2022, we got really excited. And so we had multiple tracks, essentially. Realistically, this just meant that at any given hour, there might be multiple events happening. And we did get some feedback that this was too many options and too much going on, especially because the tracks weren't organized thematically. It was just, hey, at 11 a.m., you've got multiple different options. So we're taking that into consideration for next year.
So for UCGIS week, we ended up working off of a bi-weekly committee meetings, and working groups work more frequently. And so we had a formal structure in the sense of, great, if you can attend, that's great. And if you can't, catch up on the meeting minutes and the notes, and we'll go from there. When we created the committee and the working groups, we did a call for committee members from libraries, administration, faculty, and students, and really encouraging everyone, if you want to help coordinate and work with us, you're welcome to join. I think we had maybe 15 people between both years from different campuses helping. We offered to do a single Eventbrite registration where we knew roughly how many people would be attending. We ended up with the decision to make those Zoom links publicly available on a website. Yes, we knew the caveats with that, but that's the option that we chose, utilizing the different Zoom links and Zoom licenses from the different campuses. For each session, we had 2 to 3 different moderators and hosts, and so they would come from the different campuses, being able to support the session at hand. And we ended up choosing website platforms that were free. So all of these, UCGIS Week was a zero budget, I guess, external money other than our time and investment to put on. So we pages for year 1, and then ArcGIS Hub pages for year 2, and linking to several other different resources such as Google Sheets. So that's really what we use for our platform and tools for organizing the event.
And so a somewhat similar story for Love Data Week, also zero budget. So we relied upon tools and platforms that the university already had access to. So our planning was almost entirely asynchronous. We used Google Docs and emails, and then the UC system is really into Slack, so we use that as well. We had a few larger Zoom calls, but the asynchronous model seemed to work best for people's schedules. And it also meshed really nicely with our overarching model, which again, each campus kind of acts autonomously in terms of platform, how it wants to run registration and presentations. Our main website, which sort of brought together all the events under this single umbrella and linked out to each individual event registration page, was built using GitHub Pages. And we had shared branding. So we had this fabulous heart logo that has all the names of the UC campuses that are participating. So we can see here our giant Google sheet that has this information about, the host campus, the link to the registration page, whether it's a hands-on workshop. And so this was all the asynchronous planning we did. And then here we have this all fed into GitHub Pages to have our website. And so this is what people would see when they want to register for an event.
So what were some of the pros and cons of the structure and the way that we went about this? So for UCGIS Week, one of the biggest pros is that it reduced the burden to coordinate a campus-only event. So, typically you had one person trying to create these large events with some to little support and structuring this. So that it was one of those, the fabulous, just that ability to coordinate and create this larger event. It also created this larger community of practice between academics, administration, and IT. And so we're really able to understand who on the other campus, maybe if I have a question from someone in my IT or from the administration, I can connect them to someone else. We also used this framework that we wanted to create an event that would be sustainable regardless if coordinating folks left or if they needed to drop off for some reason. So it could be sustainable year after year with just the focus of creating a one-year event. One of the cons that we realized as a group is that while we ask people to register for Eventbrite ahead of time, we post the links publicly. So there was no real way to see who attended each event. We had numbers, but we didn't necessarily know where they were coming from. And that gets into one of the things that we'd like to improve upon.
And so for Love Data Week, we kind of saw the same pros as GIS Week. It's a less intensive time commitment, but you reach so many more people than any single event could that would be in person. Because it's a lower time commitment, people also tended to be more likely to help organize and run a workshop. And then, of course, we have this sense of community among UC librarians. And so we did have an existing cross-UC group, but this was really a way for all of us to get to know each other a little bit more and collaborate on something. And I feel like we have a much closer sense of community across the UC. And because of the way that we set up our registration, where you had to register for each individual event, and when people were registering, we asked them what campus they were from and what department they were from, we actually have this really interesting data set where we can see who's interested in what topics and especially on what campuses. And this can help us guide planning for future events. Now, the downsides of the informal structure we have is that it's kind of fragile. On the one hand, this distributed planning is actually pretty robust because if one campus isn't participating, no problem. There are 9 other campuses that are putting on events. The downside is that because we didn't have any sort of formal committee structure and everyone is just a fantastic volunteer, when someone wants a break, we're still figuring out how to go about that. And so I was the people wrangler in chief for the first 2 years, and I wanted to take a break for this year. And so finding someone to take over was sort of a lot of asking politely / arm twisting. We don't really have a formal structure in place to have succession plans.
So sort of our summary for UCGIS Week and the collaboration style is that we really were focused on how do we create a cross-campus event that is sustainable, so that if people leave or if we don't have an access to a license, we can still move forward without major changes. So we're not dependent on a single campus or an individual to be able to host this event.
And so the way I like to summarize UC Love Data Week is a data potluck approach where everyone brings something to the table, and then together we have this fabulous buffet of data content. It allowed our campus members to be flexible, and there was just enough overarching structure that from the outside looking in, it looks like a cohesive and comprehensive cross-UC event. And nobody involved in our planning felt like they had, the bandwidth for a huge amount of effort. So this just enough structure and just enough commitment worked really well to let people be involved without feeling overly burdened.
And so,
sorry.
go ahead. And so ultimately, like similar thoughts, so we've done this for the past 2 years. What are we going to do for the future? We've really enjoyed the collaborations, the successes, what these 2 events have created for all of our campuses. So things that we've talked about, for the 2 events and within our own is reassessing the websites, right? We've used free versions, but there's a lot of back end work on those. So do we use free versions, or do we look at a paid option that we can use across for both events or others?
And so we're also interested in having a central location for recordings and slides. So UCGIS Week has their YouTube channel, which is a great way to have everything in the same place. UC Love Data Week, each event is hosted either on that campus library's YouTube. Some of them are just on a random site. Some of them are in Google. And there's not really a central location, which is something that we'd like to have because we essentially have 60 workshops recorded, and that would be a nice thing to have in a central location.
And the other option is we know that both of these events were created in sort of this COVID environment, but we know that we want to continue working when we're all back on campus and in person. And so we've talked about how do we incorporate in-person on-campus events into this larger virtual structure.
And finally, there's a lot of overlap. You know, Amy mentioned these are meant to be complementary. These are not in competition with each other. And so there are people involved in both, and there are topics involved in both. And so it would be fantastic in the future if we could figure out a way to have some topics that really follow through. So for instance, there's a workshop or a presentation in UC GIS Week that then is picked up on in Love Data Week. And maybe it's going over some cool GIS data in GIS Week. And then in Love Data Week, we talk about how to use ArcPy and analyze geospatial data with Python and Jupyter notebooks. And so we're looking for not only collaborations across campuses for these events, but how can these events work together? And so again, in the spirit of collaboration, we welcome questions, comments, and ideas. We're trying to figure out how we can use the best pieces of UC GIS Week and UC Love Data Week and what we can learn from other collaborations so that we can put on these fantastic events and help our 280,000 students learn a lot more about GIS and data. So thank you.
Thank you. Have we got any questions in here? Okay. I don't have a mic.
Hello, this is Tess speaking. Hello. The question I have is, you've done a lot of collaboration on events, and I was curious if you have any plans to collaborate on other training materials, such as like short tutorials or written guides or any other materials that could or really cross campuses.
Yes, yes-ish. So after UC Love Data Week, we realized that the same group of people was like 90% of the people who do the carpentries trainings on the UC campuses. So we started doing UC-wide carpentries training, which is existing lesson planning. We haven't really talked about kind of UC-wide planning for tutorials and training materials in that way. However, I think it's a really good idea and kind of a natural follow-up to some of what we've been doing in, for instance, UC Love Data Week. So for the first year, we did an intro to APIs, and then the second year, intermediate APIs. And maybe this next year, we'll do advanced APIs. So somewhere in there, we actually have some good documentation that we could do a better job pulling together and deploying as individual workshops. So I think it's a good idea and somewhere that we might end up going. Amy, what about for GIS?
Yeah, within the GIS stuff, we've talked about it and we've tried to implement. Several courses have actually opened up their events to sort of the larger UC. So maybe they were offering it just to one. We've also had cross UC, the geospatial carpentries workshop. So that was just between two campuses. They made their participants priority and then opened it up to others. And then there's others that we've talked about. How do we incorporate facilities, right? There's cross-campus materials for facilities and information management. And then there's also geocoding within sort of a HIPAA compliant environment. And so using UCSF and some other researchers from UC San Diego Health or some of the other medical centers, how do we leverage this to be able to build so that we're not having to build the same information for our constituents, but build collaboratively and then distribute sort of more widely. So we've talked about it, but 2 years in and sort of everything that we've had to do, we're still moving in that direction.
All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to our next presentation. This is on a use case for building a researcher community around data sharing, the Swedish COVID-19 Data Portal, which will be presented by Dr. Liane Hughes, PhD, has a background in animal behavior and mammalian evolution. She began working at the SciLifeLab Data Center in 2020. And also presenting will be Dr. Katarina Öjefors-Stark, PhD. She has a background in pharmacology and biochemistry nationally and internationally, and has worked as a data steward at SciLifeLab Data Center since 2020. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, still on the Zoom muting thing, 2 years in. Yeah, I'm Liane and I'm the visualizations engineer for the SciLifeLab Data Center. So I'll take you through the first half of this talk where we'll be looking at what the portal is, what it does, and how we built our community. And then Katarina will be taking over for the second half of the talk, where she'll talk more about the lessons learned and what we would advise anyone doing this in future, or indeed our past selves. So, move on the slides. So a little bit of background, as everyone here I'm sure knows, that it was really important right at the start of the pandemic. It was realized that the way we were going to be able to accelerate research the most quickly and be able to do that efficiently was if researchers and the research community had a place where resources, tools, services, data could be shared as widely as possible and as quickly as possible. In recognition of this and to facilitate those efforts, the European Commission set up the European COVID-19 Data Platform. Part of that platform was the European COVID-19 Data Portal, which is functionally a website that acts as a hub for all things European-based that also pertain to COVID-19. In 2020, very early on, again spring, just after that, we at the SciLifeLab Data Center received an assignment from the Swedish Research Council to be able to create the national node of this in Sweden, which would obviously become the Swedish COVID-19 Data Portal. Our portal was actually the first to go live, first national portal to go live in June of 2020. And we had an assigned portal team from September of 2020. So that allowed us to really build on this work and really expand out after that point. So our main target audience for everything has always been researchers. We've always tried to appeal to the researchers, provide them with the tools and services and the guidance that they need, and also uplift resources that we haven't ourselves built, but are available for them to be able to use. We've also had sections of the portal that are aimed at the public to make the research accessible to them so they can have some idea of what's going on with certain components wherever possible. And we have had the open sharing of data, code, tools, services, etc., as like a central pillar of the portal right from the start. So all of that is staying the same, has been one of our central pillars for the last 2 years. And as we move further into 2022, we are transitioning into a state of preparation for future pandemics. So the portal is transitioning to get ready for that stage. And we are therefore making a lot more resources available for infectious diseases other than COVID-19 and other tools and services that could be used for future pandemics, as well as any other things that come along. So we will eventually be called the Swedish COVID-19 and Pandemic Preparedness Portal. So as I said, we have a big focus on openly sharing the data and making it as open as possible and as closed as absolutely necessary, and adherence to the FAIR principles. So what do we do about that? We provide a lot of encouragement and support, which sounds really fluffy, but to give you some hard lines on it, we provide guidance for submissions. For example, we have guidelines on how to submit sequence data into ANA. We also provide a help desk that we operate together with NBIS. So we provide really individualized, that allows us to talk to the researchers really one-on-one, get to their individual needs. We also believe in leading by example. So we make everything open that we produce. So the code behind the portal, for example, is available on GitHub. And a lot of other countries have used this as a basis for their own national portals. So we know it's been used. We also do this for all of the kind of code that we make, so everything to do with visualizations, for example. We also do a lot to promote work that is focused on open sharing. So we produce a lot of data highlights where we uplift work done by Swedish groups and show not only their results, but centrally how they shared all of their data and their code. We also do a lot on social media where we show where things are presented out. So, for example, here we've got one tweet that we made for our own institutional data repository, sorry. So we kind of point out where this open data is available, what subjects it's on, so it draws people into that resource. We also produce news items where we kind of make it clear that we've got new resources available, for example. The portal would not be where it is today without collaboration with a lot of other institutions and research groups. So one example is our work with the biobanks in Sweden. So Biobank Sverige currently comprises of 18 biobanks from all over Sweden and 35 collections. And what we do in our work with them is we basically give them a space where it can be made clear where the sample collections are held, what they contain, what they can be used for, the source of those, and it makes it so that people can really get a feel for what's available, what they could use and what they have access to and how to do that. So it's been one of our most visited pages, so it's been really good. We also spend quite a lot of time producing dashboards, so some of those are work with research groups. So we work really closely with those groups throughout the process to build their page, and these pages are by no means static. And so the groups can upload their data, and that can feed directly into the pages, into the visualizations that we custom produce for them. They can then use those visualizations in their promotions and in their publications. For example, the wastewater groups that we work with often will tweet out their latest data update with the visualizations that we've produced on the dashboard for them. We also make it a point on these pages to have all of the information about the methods they used, how the data was collected, where people can get access to the data and code behind everything. So it's really something that we continue to work with them something really closely on, so that everyone can see how this work develops over time. We have other types of dashboards. So we have partner organizations. We work closely with the Symptom Study app, and we produce visualizations for them, for example, but we basically like a lead in a different angle, a different access point into their research. So we make it clear what they do and how people can access it. We do the same thing with Crush COVID, another one of our partner projects. We also make a point to highlight public sources of data. So for example, we've got vaccination data that's made available by the Swedish Health Agency, Public Health Agency. So we create visualizations for them to really show, well, on our dashboard, not for them specifically, but to show everyone exactly what the data would show and exactly how they could gain access to it. We do this with post-COVID data as well. So have we been successful in our efforts? I would say so. We've got over 70,000 visitors since launch and over 230,000 page views, mostly from Sweden, but we have had a lot of contact with other countries who have made use of our resource as well. So with that said, I will pass you over to Katarina to talk about the lessons learned.
Yes, thank you, Liane. So what lessons have we learned while working with the portal over these last 2 years? Well, the most important thing is actually to have staff working 100% of the projects and also to have clear and dedicated funding. It's been really helpful to have staff in your team that has like particular, but in the same time complementing skills and background. So in the team, we have people with a really strong life science background. We have some staff that's trained in communication, for example, and we have some people that are trained in web development and others with really strong visualization skills, like, for example, my colleague Liane. The second lesson learned is about the software. So the software you use should be easy for everyone to add and edit the content in. And for this reason, we choose to use Hugo. All the content is set in Markdown, so everyone in the portal team can use Markdown, and this will make it much, much easier when we're setting content on the portal. The reason for choosing Hugo was that we needed something that even with minimal technical skill, it's possible for all the members to add and edit the basic content. The content on the portal, that's held in an accessible space. So we have a public GitHub repository, and you see the link here. In the beginning, we also, well, we still do, but something that was very, very important in the beginning when the portal was just launched, and as Liane mentioned, in the early spring of 2020, that was that we allowed the community volunteers to quickly add and edit content. And this was really essential for a quick start. we also allow others to use the code which has been used to build the portal and to build their own national portals. And today there are approximately, I think, 5 or 6 other European portals that are built on this code. Well, the third lesson learned is about the content. So it's really important when you build this kind of portal that you early on have a main focus, you have a main topic. What will your content be about? So for us, it's research data management and support. We also have sections for community building, and this is because we want to draw people into the resource. So we have aggregated funding opportunities, we have ongoing projects from the major Swedish funders. We have a publications database, which is now up to, I think, about 2,500 publications and preprints. And the inclusion criteria for the publications database is that at least one co-author is active at a Swedish institute or university. And we have the data highlights, which my colleague Liane also mentioned before. These are in essence news items, but they are not focused on the research itself, but on the sharing of research data and code. So what you want with the content, the lesson is that you want to showcase really good examples and you want to encourage best practices with the portal. And by doing this, what we are focusing on here is, of course, to get the research community to adhere to open science. And we share our code, so we are trying to do as we preach, that we are also adhering to open science with the build and the content on the portal. Well, the next lesson learned is about the environment. So you really need a mandate for the work, a clear assignment, which we had from the start from the Research Council, Vetenskapsrådet, and also clear funding. But you also need to be, in a sense, embedded in a research community already from the start. And we were very, very fortunate to be this. And that meant we could also establish lines of communication. So, for example, the SciLifeLab projects, they were directed to the portal to get support. The Swedish Research Council, they also directed questions about research data management to us. They encouraged projects to collaborate with the portal in making their data available. And they also promoted the portal in different media. And last but not least, the portal team has also reached out in a kind of an outreach project to Swedish COVID-19 projects to offer support independent on where they were funded from. And the fourth lesson learned, that's about collaboration. And collaboration has been totally essential. I mean, both our partners and our collaborators, both on a national level and international level, totally essential for our work. So the involvement in international and national effort, that's of course been benefiting us. We have been reaching out to the Swedish COVID-19 projects to offer them support. We're also part of the Beyond COVID project. It's abbreviated by COVID. It's a Horizon project with over 50 partners focusing on, well, I would say, pandemic preparedness. And this is really giving us a direct line to the large European networks of experts in multiple disciplines. And as Liane also mentioned before, we are the Swedish node of the European COVID-19 data platform, which has also given us a direct line to EMBL, EBI, for example. And these collaborations have helped us create content, provide better training and support, and so much more. By involving ourselves in these national and international efforts, we have also, of course, benefited them because we have been openly sharing the portal code very early on, which has aided the international effort and the rapid response and helped the setup of other portals early on during the early days of the pandemic. And it also gives direct links to resources that we have collated and created to other. So with that, I would just like to say that what you need is, well, you need a good team. So we would like to thank the portal team, the past and present members. You see the present team here. This is Arnold, myself, Liane, Senthil, Hanna, and Johan Rung is the head of the data center. We also like to give a really good, big thank you to the research groups, our partner projects, the community, and many, many more. And of course, to our funders, the Swedish Research Council and SciLifeLab. So if you want to know more and if you want to get in contact with us, so please visit us at COVID-19dataportal.se. You can also find us in social media, in Twitter or LinkedIn. There is a contact form on the portal if you have questions. And also you can just send us an email at datacenter@SciLifeLab.se. So with that, we would like to thank you so much for your attention and give the floor for questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any questions here for this team?
Yes, thanks for the presentation. It was very interesting. And I just was wondering about if there's any way to get any kind of indication of the impact of the portal on research, because you had kind of usage statistics and things like that. And I know that it's a difficult question, but I was wondering if there's any kind of way of getting at that question, if there's the impact on research.
I can start off and then Katarina can maybe expand on what I say. It's difficult to measure in a kind of quantifiable way, because people can cite our code, for example, they can cite the portal, but mostly the way we know that it's making impact is through people getting in touch with us and people saying how they've used it and how it's accelerated their own research. So it's really about the kind of collaboration we've had back and the feedback we've had back, really. Although in future it would be really nice to develop a way that we could quantify this. So we are looking into, as a data center, we're looking into things like altmetrics. So maybe that will be a function that we can use in the future to more accurately measure what we do with the portal.
Yes, and I could say that we know that we have been in contact with more than 200 research projects. And as we mentioned, we also have had this outreach project in the sense that we have reached out to projects that were not funded from the SciLifeLab COVID-19 program and not from the Research Council. And yeah, it's been very, I would say, popular in a sense. And people have also reached out to us and, gotten back and say they would like to share more data. And
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next presentation. This is SND, a Swedish national collaboration. It's in person. And here we have Dr. Max Petzold. He's the director of the Swedish National Data Services and has been leading it for the last 6 years. His goal is that it become a distributed repository based on all the Swedish universities. Max is a professor in biostatistics and is also head of the School of Public Health and Community Medicine at the University of Gothenburg. Let's see. We can find yours. And then we'll have to share. And present. Good.
It looks fine on the screen. So thank you. So it's a little bit interesting since we are in a way hosting the conference also. So we are happy to be here and presenting. And that explains why we are also here in real life. I mean, that we are living in Gothenburg. The SND is a national infrastructure for research data for all of Sweden, but hosted by the University of Gothenburg. So our aim is, I mean, to help the researchers and also the universities to make their research data accessible, and I mean, of course, both nationally and internationally. It's a consortium of 9 universities that is the owner, and Göteborg University is the host for this collaboration. And then we have 23 other higher education institutions and other research-intensive authorities that are members. So it's a little bit, not fully unique, but to some extent different from other repositories, that we're really a network, and it's a distributed organization. So not for the moment, but we are moving in this direction, that each of the universities should store their data themselves, and we are just coordinating everything here. So the consortium looks like this. It's the 9 biggest universities in Sweden. So from Gothenburg here, and we have the Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg also, Lund University, Umeå, Uppsala, Swedish University for Agricultural Sciences, Stockholm University, Karolinska Institute, and KTH, Royal Institute of Technology. So it's a very nice regional or geographical distribution, but also in terms of specialization, that we have these broad universities, but also some more focused universities. Their contribution is, hosting us in a way, but also contributing with money in terms of specialists. So we are utilizing researchers in the different universities that are helping us to develop in a good way. And these are, of course, shifted over time. So the intention is that we should be able to build up more of competency within one area. And then, of course, we could have a couple of researchers in that area, not perhaps experts in open science, open data, but expert in their area, what is needed for this area. So it's a great contribution from these universities. And then the network in total looks like this. I will not go through all the list, but it's more or less all, it is all of the higher education units in Sweden. There are some very, very small ones that are not a part, but they are joining over time here. So we are covering all of the research, university research in Sweden, and are now adding on other members, other authorities, but also the regions that are running the healthcare. So over time, hopefully this network will be even larger. So what S&D offers is support for open access to research data through training, assistance, and technical solutions. And it's very obvious that working with a network, training and assistance is very, very important. So the technical part, of course, it is there and it's important, but the device and the training in different ways is getting more and more important. Just as an example, we are supporting the SciLife data hub, and we are working with a number of other data repositories. Sorry?
We're sharing the notes right now.
There's some issue with the screen sharing here.
There we go.
Ah, good.
Is it good?
Is it better? Super.
Good.
Thanks. Yes, so what I was trying to say is that the training and the support part is very important, and we are definitely not aiming to be the only repository, what you can say, distributed repository in Sweden, because there should be other more focused repositories, and we are happy to help them in different ways. So in our task from the Research Council, it is to really support everyone working with open data, but we don't need to handle all of the data. Okay, there was a drawback with this setting. I can't change, but I will see perhaps this way. No, so yeah, and what we built up is, of course, a technical system, but also procedures, how to handle, how to help the researchers coming with the data, sharing the data in the best way with technical solutions, but also support from the universities. With the aim to make it fair, of course. And what we have, I mean, that's very classic web-based research data catalog. So it's really like all the repositories, but the difference is that the data is not always in our repository, but we have a joint catalog for the metadata. So when you find data there, it could be that the data is in university in northern Sweden or whatever, and the link is going there. So you download from some other place. But we have this joint catalog. And the good thing with this is that the data stays with the owner, so with the university. So we don't need to transport data between different authorities, so different universities. And it's especially important working with sensitive data. We are not really there yet that this is totally up and running, but we are moving quite quickly now in this direction. And there is 31st of August, we are promised to have the one possibility of storage for the different universities up and running. I hope it will be true because that will be a major change in our work, that we really have a good repository for data that is driven by another organization where the universities can buy storage and keep it there. So hopefully 31st of August, a lot of things will happen. I'm just very quickly going to show you what it looks like, the web page. It's quite traditional. So we have the catalog, which you see on this front page. There is the search research data in the catalog. So that's the quick search. The first thing you see when you enter, but then we also have Doris, which is the tool for describing and sharing data. So here the different universities can log in and assist their researchers that also are logging into the system and supplying the data and adding the metadata. And a number of other pages, of course. But the catalog looks like this. So it's, of course, a filtered search. So you can filter for different indicators. And I have to say that most of the people that are reaching our data is using Google. So it's really visible on Google. But of course, you can go to this catalog and do more fine-tuned searches. Yes. And Doris, we are very proud about Doris. This is our system to organize the information. So I said it quickly, but the thing is that a researcher that would like to submit their data, they log into this system and start describing the data. Going through a number of checkpoints, I mean, clarifying if it's sensitive data, all that kind of things. And then just doing the basic thing, adding title, adding DOIs for the publications and all that, what makes other users better understanding the data. So metadata in different ways. And since we are trying to really keep a high standard, you can't publish the data or the metadata, sorry, before the data access unit at your university have gone through and checked that you have metadata enough and it's correct. Data doesn't contain sensitive information and doing all that kind of checks. And then at the end, they click the button and the data is published. So that's a little bit different from a number of other places. That data, now I'm talking a little bit about future, but also what is happening currently. That data is stored at the local university. We have this joint tool for putting up the metadata, and we have this system that should ensure the data quality and the metadata quality, and also that we are not publishing anything that shouldn't be published openly. So if you have data that could be published openly, then of course there is a direct link and you can download. You just need to cite the data. But if you have sensitive data, you can find it in the catalog, but you need to ask for the data to get the permission to download it. So a little bit different, but at the same time, there are a number of equalities, of course, other repositories working in approximately the same way. But we have developed this during the last 4 or 5 years here in Sweden. So, thanks.
Thank you for your presentation. It's always great to hear about data catalog work that's being done. I was curious, in your slide that you had a screenshot of the data catalog, it looked like there was a couple of data sets, one from Norway and one from Galway. I wasn't sure if, so are you also noting pulling from data sets from other universities outside of Sweden as well, or are these ones that are Swedish institutions are helping to store for institutions that are maybe not in the country? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you're observant. Yes, so we are handling all data that has some kind of relation to Swedish or a researcher that is active in a Swedish university. But of course, it could be kind of Norwegian data, it could be German data, whatever. But as long as there is a connection to Swedish university and they say that, okay, we are willing to publish this data. So in a way, they take responsibility for the data, so the ownership and all this.
And how do you keep track of all that? How do you find these data sets that are like have some connection? Are you based on publications, or do the institutions notify you of them?
And that's our weak point, that we are not really trying to find data, but this is based on researchers that come to us or using DORIS. So of course, we are not having all data in Sweden, far away from all data, but we are getting more and more data, and we should start to try to really be active in finding data that is promising in different ways, but not so far. Thanks.
What are you using for your index layer for DORIS? So where, like, you know, your search, what is your search for DORIS? And then how are you indexing the data that's going into DORIS?
You mean the metadata? Or?
Yeah, the metadata, or yeah, just kind of what does the back end of DORIS look like?
Ooh, I'm not the right person to tell about the backend part. Yeah, Olof was here. Olof, are you there?
I'll find him.
No? Is really one of the backend people here. But anyhow, no, sorry, I can't tell about the details. It's a magic box and producing what it should do. Thanks.
Bye, online people.